Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over.
Well, hello and welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. We're back for a new inter-county season ahead of the start of the National Leagues this weekend, with hurling and football to look forward to over the next couple of months in the leagues, and then the championships to follow later on in the season. Rory O'Neill from the RTÉ Sport team is back for another season. Rory, how are things?
Very good, Carl. Looking forward to another good year.
Should be great. And Éamonn Fitzmaurice dialing in from Kerry as well with us. Éamonn, how are things?
Great, Cathal. How's the form?
Good to have you back for another season. Plenty to pick through, lads, in terms of the National League, which gets underway next weekend. But Éamonn, first, we thought it was a good summer for Kerry last year with the inter-county success, but you've managed to continue it on into the club season as well, the 3 titles across senior, intermediate and junior.
Yeah, it's been a brilliant winter for Kerry football. To be honest, Cathal, there's been a bit of magic in the air. I suppose for all 3 clubs to manage to win the All-Irelands is incredible achievements for them. But obviously where I'm based and working as well, then the 2 local teams to manage to win the intermediate and senior club All-Irelands, and the manner of Dingle's win last weekend and everything. There's been fantastic football played over the winter, right throughout the winter, but particularly in the last couple of weeks. And like I said, the word that comes to mind is it's been a kind of a magical winter and a very special winter, and the Dingle crew are still very much enjoying it at the moment, and I'm sure they will for the rest of the week.
Yeah, it was fantastic, Rory, the culture and the language aspect of it as well for the 2 clubs from that Gaeltacht area. Just on the senior final last weekend, probably, is that as good a game as we've seen under the new rules?
I'd say it was the best club final I've ever seen.
You think, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, it was. I suppose it was fitting in a way that it was almost like a bookend to the whole new rules experiment, because it was club football's first time going through the new rules, and to sort of crown it with the kind of game that we saw. And I think you have to give credit to both teams, particularly Bridget's as well, because obviously when you lose 2 and 3, that's very, very tough. But what they brought to the party, I know it's absolutely no consolation to them now, but it was just an extraordinary game. I mean, I think it was 5-1 after 5 or 6 minutes, and even under the old rules, you're saying to yourself, well, that's game over.
Yeah.
But that's the magic, and Éamonn mentioned the word, that's the magic of the way football has evolved now. No game is ever done. And I think the 2-pointer has been transformative. That has had a huge impact. And I think what I'm hoping, and certainly be very interested to get Éamonn's views, because he played a key role, I suppose, in bringing about all these changes, is that we'll see another evolution and the game will probably improve again. Now, it's very interesting to see how much more of an impact they will have at county level. It's like you do have that little bit of extra space at club level. Maybe teams don't have the same levels of fitness, and I suppose maybe it's more conducive to creating the kinds of games that we got with the new rules. What will be very interesting this year now in an inter-county context is with managers having had a full 12 months of experience with them, where we see the game going next. But it's unbelievably exciting. Yeah,
and a winter, Éamonn, as well, to pour over all the data that we had from the inter-county and club game last year. Just on the senior final last weekend, Éamonn, Dingle have obviously come through some cracking matches along the way in Munster, in their All-Ireland semi-final, in their final win as well. From a team point of view, from a management point of view, did you ever get the sense that maybe your name is on the cup? Maybe Dingle felt like that as well on the way through?
Yeah, there was a feeling of that about it, because of, as you mentioned, Cathal, so many of their games were tight and they needed extra time. And even going back to the county final in Kerry against Austin Sacks, they needed a huge kind of final quarter performance that day to get the job done. So that's been the nature of their run this year, and I suppose the fact that they were in that position so many times helped them, and they were probably in the unusual position for them the last day, that they were the ones caught on the line by Rory Fallon's brilliant 2-pointer at the end of normal time, and Bridget's took off in the first half of extra time, and Dingle had to go and do it again in the second half, which they did. But they just had that resilience and experience and never give up attitude about them all the way throughout the season. And I think Paul Gainey has spoken about it a couple of times, that they had made that decision that they felt in previous years that when games were gone from them, that maybe they didn't drive as hard as they could until the final whistle, whereas this year they made a decision that they were just going to keep going, and which would be part of their nature, to be honest. So they did it, but that club final, there were so many key moments. You could spend the whole podcast talking about. There was, I don't know how many talking points, but I think Mark O'Connor's block towards the end of the game. I know the fantastic scores that were kicked and everything, but that kind of signified what they were about, and it reminded me of the year that Mark was captain of the Kerry Miners in 2015, right at the end of a Munster semi-final game against Cork, which was a knockout game. I don't know if you remember it, Rory. He did a similar thing. He blocked down a ball at one end of the pitch. He was the captain of that minor team, and they broke up the field and kicked the winning score, and it was game over in a 1-point win that night. So, I know we see the fantastic scores, and Mikey Gainey's left-footed point, obviously, at the end was brilliant, but sometimes it can be the blockdowns and the tackles that make the final difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really enjoyable club campaign. Then we look ahead to the inter-county action, which is obviously back this weekend. Éamonn, from a Kerry point of view, what would you be expecting with the county players? You mentioned the likes of Paul Gainey that's been involved in that lengthy club campaign. In terms of a return date, what would your sense of that be?
I would say, look, that they'll definitely get, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 weeks off, I'd imagine, before we see them actually back in action. Cathal, I'm not sure what the plan is, but the in terms of actual feet up time, I'm not sure how much they'll have, because to get ready to actually put the jersey on and get back in the pitch, there'll obviously be a phase of building into that and doing those lads will almost have to do a bit of a separate pre-season to get ready for action. But I think certainly Paul has been carrying injuries. Brianna Beagley with the Gaeltacht had been carrying injuries as well. So they're critical players for Kerry come summertime. So they'll be given the opportunity now, I'd say, to get the bodies right, first of all, and then do a kind of a mini pre-season to get ready for their Kerry return. But look, there's going to be opportunities for other fellas there, and we saw it with Kerry last year at the start of the season. The likes of Sean O'Brien and Mark O'Shea and players like that, they were very much on the fringes of the team or even the panel. And when they got their opportunities later on in the time, they really cemented down their places. So there's other players in that Kerry squad that will be looking for opportunities. They'll get the opportunities over the next couple of weeks now, and it's about making sure that they kind of take that opportunity from a personal perspective. And if they do, then obviously that further strengthens Jack's hand going forward.
Yeah, it certainly worked to good effect last year in the league, where Kerry developed their panel really well throughout the course of the spring. So Division 1 starting this weekend, Dublin against Donegal at Croke Park on Saturday, then Galway against Mayo, Kerry, Roscommon and Monaghan Armagh, Rory, are the 4 fixtures. I suppose the conversation around the Division 1 of the league in the last few years, whether teams want to actually make it through to the final. What's your sense of what counties will be approaching this season like?
Well, there's a 2-week gap now that they've built in, so hopefully that'll give teams a little bit more impetus to actually go after it. And it's just the incentive to win it. I mean, why would you want to win it? And you're looking, obviously we have a new championship format as well now this year, so it's one less game on your path. So maybe it'll allow teams to say to themselves, let's have a real cut off it. I suppose from my point of view, there's new man momentum that's going to be required in a Dublin camp and in Mayo. And if I was to kind of hazard a strong guess, I think those 2 teams in particular will probably need to hit the ground running, just in terms of giving confidence to the players, the management group, that we're on the right track. So I could see good performances coming from both of those teams early on. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if you're going to see a fairly strong team, depending on the players available. Obviously, the Sigerson is still in high season, and I think Mayo will be missing quite a few that maybe Andy Moran would have had his eyes on. UL, I think, were one of the best teams that I've seen the Sigerson this year, and they're backboned. I think in their last game, I don't know, is it 9 Mayo guys that started? You have a centre back there, Sean Morahan. He's definitely somebody I think that Andy will look at. And obviously, look, we've already heard of Cian McHale up front in a full forward sense. So I think Mayo are somebody that I'm very, very interested to see. And and we know the kind of person that Andy Moran is. He's got that kind of infectious personality. I think the footballers falling out of trees in Mayo, they'll never be shy on finding players with that athletic ability. I think that's going to become a huge part now in the game. Everything is about 100 mile an hour. It's getting up and down the field. It's having lads that can run and run and run, because with the solo and go, the way the whole game has seemed to be drifting towards, I think that sort of athletic ability will become a big factor. The big question, I suppose, from a Mayo perspective is, can they find that type of marquee forward that's going to, chip in with the kind of scores that's going to get them over the line, because racking up big scores is going to be absolutely essential. And then from a Dublin perspective, they're the two that I think will go after it. I think I could see both of them really going hammer and tongs at this league. And Dublin, I know, look, Ger Brennan, cast the net fairly broadly across the county pre-season, engaged in quite an extensive trial period, developing regional teams to try and just to see if he can unearth a player or two. I always find those types of situations a little bit of an exercise in optics to a large degree. I wouldn't be one bit surprised by the time Dublin's championship team comes around that you're going to see an awful lot of familiar faces there once again. Were we surprised when Brian Fenton said that he had gotten the call twice to see would he come back? No.
Yeah.
So that'll give you an indication that, look, they do have still some issues that they need to address. But I would expect them to come out fairly strong again on Saturday night. And it's a game that's a really interesting game. Now, for me, there's two massive games this weekend. Galway Mayo, Dublin Donegal, can't wait for both.
Yeah, should be a great game at Croke Park between those two. I guess a contrast in many ways between the two, with Jim McGuinness now, Éamonn, settled back in as Donegal manager, and then the new era for Dublin starting under Ger Brennan. I think Ger Brennan said he looked at about 130 players over the course of the winter, which is an incredible amount of players to get a look at. What's your take on where Dublin might be at coming into this year, Éamonn?
Yeah, similar to what Rory said there. I think there's going to be a big curiosity factor about them, to be honest, Cathal, to see where they're at, and that's going to be a fair test now on Saturday evening. That you're at home in Croke Park. Donegal are coming. Obviously, Donegal are going to have the bit of hurt from the last time they were at HQ, and they're going to want to put in a big performance there. I imagine, as they always are, they're going to be flying fit. Jim McGuinness looked at a good few players during the course of the McKenna Cup as well. So yeah, that is going to be a cracker. I think the interesting thing with Donegal that I'd be looking at is how are they going to approach it from the defensive point of view this year. I did feel last year that to win the All-Ireland they would have to change a small bit. They didn't, which wasn't surprising. They were loyal to a system that had got them the whole way to an All-Ireland final. And even recently I saw Kieran Thompson, when he was doing kind of promotion at the start of the McKenna Cup, and he was asked about it, I'd say, and he was kind of saying, look, was it a systems failure, or was it a playing failure that they didn't implement the system properly? So that would kind of suggest that they're going to dig in and trust what they have, and that they're not going to innovate. But I would expect that they have to innovate some bit defensively in terms of moving away from that kind of deep zone that they played most of the time last year. So again, Croke Park, the game plays a bit differently in Croke Park, and that'll get a good testing now on Saturday night. And especially it'll be interesting to see if Dublin have developed a bit more of a 2-point threat, which was, absent from them last year. And again, against Donegal's system, that can test them out. So, there's loads of interesting things to be looking forward to straight away.
Absolutely. And Ger Brennan starting life as Dublin manager this weekend. Then you've got, as you mentioned, Andy Moran in Mayo, and Roscommon have a new manager as well. They go down to Kerry for a big ask for them to get things underway. And they didn't have two great results in the FBD League either, Roscommon, over the last few weeks. In terms of the other games, Kerry, Roscommon and Monaghan Armagh is a big one as well. Points on offer.
You're going to be looking at, Armagh have lost quite a few. One significant forward obviously is taking a year out, and obviously Monaghan have had a couple of retirements, and then Scottstown went deep in the club championship, so there might be a couple of late returnees, and that can affect preparation. It's a Derby game. I think in many ways it's a good opportunity for Monaghan because you just don't know. I mean, Armagh, for me last year, given they were All-Ireland champions last year, and much like Donegal, they just really, I suppose, they were slow enough to, get a bit of evolution into the way they play. I think from a Monaghan perspective, they obviously had Andy Moran on board as a forwards coach, and they played some very good football at times. So look, that one when in a derby fixture, very, very hard to call. I think Roscommon are going to struggle though. I think Bridget's will obviously, no different to Dingle, will obviously be off for a couple of weeks, and they will need a couple of weeks. Now maybe some of them will want to come back quite quickly just to flush it out, and that can sometimes happen and might be the best lease of life that you're going to get. New management sometimes can give you a bounce as well. But I think they will potentially struggle in Division 1. And if you were to pick a team to go down, they've been going up and down. It doesn't really seem to bother them. I think one thing though, Cathal, one of the things that is noticeable, particularly with how strong Division 2 is as well this year, and given the way teams don't seem to want to win the league but don't want to get relegated, Division 1 and Division 2 have kind of being morphing into a sort of a Division 1A and a Division 1B for me to a large extent. I mean, would you be surprised, and I know we're jumping ahead here to Division 2, but would you be surprised to see Tyrone make a challenge and be competitive and actually go and, compete for an All-Ireland? You would not. And they'll be doing that from Division 2. Dublin won it from that division only a couple of years ago. So, being like, if Roscommon end up in a situation where they find themselves at the bottom, I don't think it's the end of the world. And I think building ahead towards a tough Connacht championship for them. Is it Mayo?
Yeah, and it's always really competitive. Yeah. And you have to remember as well how tight Division 1 was last year, where you could have thrown a blanket over all of the teams to make the final or get relegated. From a management point of view, Éamonn, I suppose it varies, doesn't it, from county to county in terms of your goals in the league. But from your perspective, when you were involved with Kerry, what would you be thinking then heading into the National League? Is it just a case of trying to retain your status, or what's your sense of that?
Definitely try and get a win early if you can, Cathal. That was always our thing. We'd come back, early in the year, and you'd be down a lot of bodies, fellas coming back late, injuries, extended club campaigns, all that kind of stuff. Sigerson, there's a lot in the mix early in the time, and I think just what you want is just a win. Any kind of a win, get points on the board. My first couple of years in charge, we lost 4 in a row the first year, we lost 3 in a row the second year, and just trying to keep the positivity in the group and keep focusing on the big picture can be challenging when you're losing games despite doing everything right really in the background. But the quality of the opposition is so high, it can be hard to get points on the board. So that, I think that's the priority for all the managers. Just try and get a win, get points on the board, start building momentum, and then as the bodies start to come back, you'll be in a stronger position. And look, we see it every year at the start as well, Carl. Some teams they'll be fitter in particular. They'll have done work earlier. I mean, Mayo are case in point that they did a pre-season overseas camp this year, so you'd be expecting Mayo to be physically in very good condition, and that can be a big kind of difference. Or it can make the difference early in the league if there are kind of varying fitness levels. So it will be interesting to see where teams are at. I think it's always the first weekend you can have kind of strange results at times or things that you wouldn't be expecting, but by round 3 then when it's starting to bed down, we'll have a good picture of where teams are at. And the likes of Andy Moore, there's huge energy in Mayo at the moment, and there's huge goodwill around, and he's saying all the right things, and he's done a lot of media work, and the messaging has been very positive and everything else. But he'll know as well they need to get points on the board, because if you start losing games, that goodwill can disappear very fast, and the group can come under pressure early in the year, which is something you want to avoid if you can at all.
But you mentioned there, Éamonn, about pressure, and when you were losing those games, did you feel under pressure? Because generally speaking, the Kerry support base would be quite a patient and sympathetic bunch, wouldn't they?
Yeah. No, I didn't, to be honest, Rory. I didn't, because look, we knew there were mitigating circumstances, and we knew that the work we were doing in the background was what we needed to do. And for me, it was always about the big picture. And there were times you just had to batten down the hatches and ride out those periods. But if you'd had a full team now and you were losing games, and there was there was a lack of spirit in the group, and more important ingredients like that missing, you'd have been worried. But all of the ingredients were there, but at different times we were short of personnel, or we just lost games narrowly, or we weren't fit enough at that stage. So, not really, to be honest. But like I said, especially for new managers, they just would it's almost like you can exhale when you get a win and you get 2 points on the board, and you can start looking forward to the next weekend. Whereas when it's the other way, it just keeps things a bit tense for a bit longer.
We'll touch on the other divisions in just a second, but just, lads, to get your perspective on the new rules, second season under the new rules, what areas, Éamonn, do you think the counties will have been looking at as the key areas maybe to improve on or make more gains over the course of the winter?
I think different teams will have different targets, Cathal. I think, I mentioned Dublin already, Mayo around the 2-pointers. They're certainly going to be looking at those because they didn't cash in them last year as the likes of Kerry did as the season went on, especially. Personally speaking, if I'd been involved in an inter-county setup the last winter, I would have definitely have been looking at one-on-one defending, and developing the art of one-on-one defending again, in terms of footwork, being able to defend one-on-one, both from the forwards perspective in terms of trying to press teams coming out, but also obviously from a defensive perspective, especially in slow attacks, because I think teams sitting in and going very zonal this year, teams are going to be better at the 2-pointers, so there'll be probably a higher percentage of 2-pointers this year. So I think teams are going to have to be able to defend the arc, and they're going to have to be able to do that in one-on-one situations. And, I think we're going to see innovation definitely in terms of a mix of man-and-man and zone at times, depending on the game circumstance, and depending on how quick teams attack as well. So I would expect innovations around that, Cathal, and kickouts as well.
Yeah, I think kickouts are going to be a big one for me. I think if you're we know the one thing managers hate, and I'm sure, look, we can ask him, but lack of control, not being able to control things. I think the kickouts, generally speaking, which is great from a supporter's point of view, and for anybody watching on, became very much into a sort of a lottery type scenario. And breaking ball, made a massive comeback, and that sort of Brian Dewar, Paul Galvin role could become very much back in vogue. But I think if you were a manager now, and if you were able to figure out, slight variations to try and secure primary possession, not to mention the McGrath Cup final, Éamonn, given it was Cork's first victory down there in 30 years. But watching the game, like Cork lost half their own kickouts. Yeah. Half.
But isn't that kind of the way that it's gone? Because it's nearly easier to attack an opponent's kickout than retain possession from your own kickout, the way that it's gone. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well, that is, yeah. Éamonn, what do you think?
It is. But look, I think, like I said, I do think there'll be innovation. Even looking at Conor Carroll last weekend now for St. Bridget's, I didn't see the percentages afterwards, but they regularly got away their kickouts, and they did very well in them. And I think at the start of the league last year, everything was so new, and when you factored in the weather conditions and wind and everything, there was almost an acceptance that it was just lump it out and try and win the break. There wasn't time for teams to be working on massive kick-out strategies. But as the season went on, we saw it. And look, there are going to be windy days where if you're kicking into a strong wind, there are going to be those kind of melees around breaking balls and that kind of thing. But a lot of the time, we have started to see innovation, and a lot of the teams are starting to push it up towards 2/3 retention of their own kick out. And I mean, if you're breaking 50-50 on the opposition kick out, then you're going to be in a great position.
Yeah.
I would expect a good bit of innovation on that, because teams have had time now, and whereas last year, to be fair to the managements and the coaches and the players and everything, they were dealing with an awful lot in one go, whereas now they'll have had a full season of it, and they'll have had a full pre-season to be tweaking and working on things. So it'll be certainly interesting to watch that over the first couple of weekends.
And I would also hope that, I think we might see some more goals. I think the fact that the 2-pointer and at intercounty level, they're so proficient at the skill and the art, and so many of them, I think you're going to be forced to push that little bit further out. And I think it might create a little bit more space in behind, and we might see more goals as a result. And again, from a neutral's perspective, I think that's what we want.
Yeah, for sure. Let's take a look at Division 2, lads. So you mentioned it, Rory, already. I mean, what a really competitive division that it is. You've got Meath against Derry, Tyrone, Kildare, Cork versus Cavan, and Offaly against Louth this weekend. A couple of teams there that'll have eyes on doing really well this year when you consider how well Meath did last year. You mentioned Tyrone and Derry down there as well, so it's a really competitive looking division.
It's a big challenge for Meath. Like, I know Meath mightn't necessarily consider themselves in the same category as a Fermanagh or a Wexford football team. They would see themselves maybe a little bit above that, but we have seen quite a lot over the last 20 years, particularly, where a team will come and make an All-Ireland semi-final and then disappear again. So the challenge for Meath really is, can they prove that it wasn't a flash in the pan? And I suppose from that point of view, I mean, like, I think we've had Fermanagh in All-Ireland semi-finals disappear, Wexford, Cavan, Tipperary, and, like, we've seen what happened in the post then. So I think the big challenge for Meath is, can they build on it? They do seem to have a pretty good selection, a pretty good quality of younger players. So their age profile is good. Obviously, Menton and Keoghan aside, and the Morris has been flying.
Yeah,
and Sigerson, one of the players of the year last year. Yeah, I think it's just about for them now, I suppose, building on it and being one of those two teams that makes that jump in promotion. And I think if they have a good manager in there, I think they'll have a good chance, actually. If I was to pick two to come out of the division, I think Tyrone will win that league. I mean, they should, given the quality of player they have. But it will be Tyrone and Meath for me.
Okay. What about Derry? Éamonn, will they be in the mix as well, do you think?
I think big time, yeah, Carl. I'd be kind of leaning more towards Tyrone, Derry, and then with Meath and Cork kind of, nipping at their heels and possibility.
Derry haven't won a match in 2 years, Éamonn, have they? Have they not won a game? What? Derry haven't won a match. It's a big jump now,
league
isn't
final,
it?
I'd say. Was it the league final in 24? Was that the last big game they won, Rory? Yeah, but look, last year they were very close in a lot of the games, and they had games won, and they lost them in the last minute and that kind of thing. And they have a lot of key players back this year. Garrett McKenlis is back from injury. He's a huge player for them to have back. The Glen lads coming in off long campaigns. They had a lot of, there was stuff going on in the background that they weren't pulling together as much as they had been previously when they were really operating at the top of their game. But they have a lot of quality players, and they have a lot of stuff coming through at underage as well. So I'd give them a good shout. Kieran Mina, when he was there before, and when he was working under Rory Gallagher, and then when he took over, he was very effective, and he did they came so close to beating Kerry in that 23 All-Ireland semi-final. So I definitely see Derry as being in that conversation big time, but I would expect Meath and Cork to have something major to say as well. And after winning the McGrath Cup now last weekend,
I was going to say, Rory,
you're on the road.
Rory cleverly didn't mention Cork there.
Yeah, I suppose from a Cork perspective, and we won't keep it too long because I'm sure not too many people are that interested. But I do think they'll be better. They have, they've put a bit more depth into the panel. It looks like the injuries to the likes of Cathal Mullaney and Conor Corbett have cleared up, probably not soon enough for them to play this weekend. In a league context, I think it will be important for them to get a good win this weekend and start that ball rolling. There's going to be, I would imagine, a huge crowd in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. It's a double header with the hurlers, so it's a good opportunity for them. And it's also like they're not meeting Tyrone until round 7. So like they'll have an opportunity to maybe get some points on the board. They've started the league, you know, historically very badly. So this is an opportunity this weekend maybe to arrest that. Look, they still have a couple of issues. As I said earlier, midfield and winning primary ball. There's a young lad, Michael McSweeney from Knocknagree. I think he could potentially come into the mix there. He's playing really well at Sigerson level for UCC as well. And I think goalkeeper, I think, is a position up for grabs because one feeds into the other. And I think if Cork can get primary ball, I think the forwards will eventually be in there that can rack up a big enough score. Converting goal chances has also been a big issue. But look, will it be good enough to get promotion out of Division 2? Will they be all that worried if they don't? I know Éamonn mentioned before that getting out of Division 2 would be a mark of progress. I think generally, you know, Cork will judge themselves on championship. That hasn't been great either, let's be honest. But I suppose if you were to sort of, you know, peer into a crystal ball, I think better than what we've seen before. But, you know, it'll be incremental.
Yeah, well, let's see how it pans out. Division 3, lots of the teams in there will have eyes on promotion and then with a view to the All-Ireland Championship later in the year as well. Down against Clare this weekend, Laois versus Limerick, Fermanagh against Wexford and Westmeath against Sligo. Westmeath have been going well in the pre-season competition in Leinster in the O'Byrne Cup under the management of Mark McHugh. Maybe a team to watch out for, Éamonn?
Absolutely, definitely, Cathal. I'd expect them. I'd expect Down to go up, and I'd expect Westmeath or maybe Clare, you know, to have a chance of going up. They were so close last year as well. But Westmeath are going well, and they have an awful lot of good players. And again, similar to the Derry situation last year, they lost a lot of games very narrowly, having played brilliant football. So you would expect them to do well. The Down one will be interesting, Cathal. I think they have to win the division really, because in terms of the Ulster Championship, they're at the same side of the draw as Donegal, Armagh, Tyrone. So trying to get it to an Ulster final to guarantee themselves Sam Maguire's status is a big ask. You know, considering the side of the draw they're on. So to give themselves some chance of being in Sam Maguire, they need to win the division and have the top kind of spot going up to Division 2. And even at that, then they're not guaranteed. And I would imagine, you know, for Down where they're at now and where they're at in their development, they need to be playing the Sam Maguire competition. They would regard playing the Tailteann Cup almost as not being enough at this stage. They've won it, and considering again they played one of the games of the year last year against Galway, and that great game above a Newry, and that's the level that they'd be feeling that they're at. So they have to win Division 3 really, and like I said, I'd expect Westmeath to go up with them, but I'd give Clare a good shout as well.
Rory, do you want a word on Division 3?
No, I would go along with that. I think Clare have a tough start. You know, they have to go away to Down on the very, very first day out. That's, you know, like straight away, would you be saying 2 points there? Unlikely. And then you're a little bit on the back foot. Whereas Westmeath have Sligo at home. You know, I think, I'm not saying it's an easy game for Westmeath, Cathal, before we get upset, but I think it's certainly easier than having to travel to Newry on your first day out. And I often think, look, momentum is massive, particularly with new managers, as you mentioned, Mark McHugh. I think, you know, and the way your fixtures fall, the number of home games versus the number of away games. It's a funny like league where you play 4 home, 3 away. But anyway, like it's so like a lot of those types of things can play into it. But I'd see, I think Westmeath with the likes of Luke O'Loughlin, I think they will have enough quality with Down to come up. But it's interesting that a lot of the time, the teams that we're saying are going to drop out of leagues are the same 2 teams that are coming back up the year after. I don't know whether that's symptomatic of a levelling out of standards or whether or not it just shows how good the league is as a competition in terms of being very, very meritorious and where you stand in the overall context. But Westmeath and Down to come up.
Yeah, and they usually 10 points or thereabouts, usually gets a marker to try and get you promoted from Division 3 to Division 2 in the last number of years. And then just a quick word on Division 4 as well. Again, looking very competitive. London against Tipperary, Antrim versus Carlow, Wicklow versus Leitrim, and Waterford against Longford. this weekend. Plenty of different teams there with ambitions to get out of that group. You could probably make the case for all of the teams actually to try and get out of that division and up to Division 3. One team that I'd be interested in certainly looking at, Éamonn, is Wicklow again under the management of Ushie McConville this season. Had a good run in the Talton Cup last year, and they'll certainly have eyes, I'd imagine, on going up from Division 4.
Yeah, 100%. I'd be tipping them to go up, and probably Antrim with them as well, Carl. That's like you said, O'Sheen is it his third or his fourth year there now, and you could see really the progress that they had made last year, and they won't want to be in Division 4. They'll consider themselves better than that, and the teams in Division 4 in particular, this is their season really. That we were talking about Division 1 earlier on, where the teams are at in the bigger picture and thinking of Sam Maguire and everything else, whereas for the teams in Division 4, getting promoted is their be all and end all, and then they start to look at the Talton Cup after that. But they'll be teams now that will be really ready to go this weekend. And as you said, always in Division 4, the standard, in terms of the standard between the teams, there's so little difference that there will be some interesting results there. But at the end, I would expect Wicklow to be going up, and Antrim with them. Yeah,
Antrim and Wicklow as well to go along with that. Antrim with a new manager, Mark Dorn, Sloughneel background as well. So, will bring a lot of experience and a lot of fresh thinking to the table. No questions there.
And maybe even Carlow as well. They've got new management too. I know they'll have a bit of a spring in their step heading into the new Murphy, season.
He took over mid-season last year
and did well.
So, did really well.
Yeah, so I think they might make a bit of a go at it in Division 4. So that's we got your predictions for those three division lads. We'll circle back to Division 1 to finish. Rory, can you give me the team you think that might be climbing the steps of the Hogan stand later this spring?
For the league title? Yeah, as I said, I believe that Dublin and Mayo will put a lot of emphasis on the league. And I think when you do have two, and I think it'd be a great league final actually.
Yeah.
I think football is better when Mayo are flying high. They bring a lot of colour and a lot of excitement, and I think you're going to see that. I think this summer there'll be the supporters will, I think, row in behind, and I think if they can get a couple of wins early on, particularly now going to Salt Hill, 30km/h winds in Salt Hill predicted for Sunday, by the way.
That's not bad. That's actually not bad.
That's actually all right. Yeah, that's a calm day. But which again, look, winter football with the 2 pointers, who has the wind, who makes use of it. There's going to be a lot of that now that we're facing in to this spring. But I think Mayo and Dublin to make a final, I think that's not to dismiss Kerry. I just think Kerry's priorities might shift ever so slightly. Going back to back will be numero uno without any question, and chasing league titles might not necessarily be the utmost on Jack's agenda. And for that reason, I think the teams that with those new managers, I could see Dublin Mayo in that final, with Ger Brennan picking up his first piece of silverware.
Okay, interesting game. And what's your take on it?
I actually disagree with you, Rory. I think Kerry will go. I think Kerry will go for it, and I'd have Kerry winning it, because for the simple reason, that when you look at Jack's record, he wants to do something he hasn't done before. Probably the only thing he's left to do, which is win back-to-back All-Irelands. And any of the years that Kerry have won the All-Ireland under Jack, they've also won the league. The years after winning the All-Ireland, they've never won the league. So I do think that he'll place as much stock in it as ever. I think they'll try to win it. You saw last weekend, even though he was saying he wasn't going to lose much sleep over,
he came out for the referee and everything. It's like this. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
He the face of thunder, and he was saying it through gritted teeth as he was saying it. So look, Jack is the ultimate competitor. So I'd be expecting Kerry to be well in the mix, and if they manage to be one of the two teams in the final, considering that if they get to the final, I'd say they probably have 3 weeks after the final, and if they don't get to a final, it's 4 weeks. So that's a fairly big gap, in a season now where players are used to the rhythm of kind of a game every 2 weeks at most. So I would expect Kerry to be in the mix at the business end of the league. All right.
Okay, well, we shall see. It should be interesting. Just before we finish, Rory, we had the reports this week that the Dublin players look set to hold a protest during the course of the league, not appearing in front of Allianz branding regarding Allianz's links listed in that UN report to the conflict in Gaza.
Yeah, it's... I don't really... I mean, you could... Is this... There's a couple of things on it. Is this something Joe Brennan really needs starting off? Probably not. Is it going to make a huge difference? I don't think it is. I think if you look at it from the governing body's point of view, and far be it from me to be defenders of the governing body, but they have a ethics and integrity committee, which are, you know, really, really good people who would have taken a lot of considerations on board before making their decision to say, look, we feel it is it's okay to continue with this as a sponsorship. And we're now into a situation whereby, you know, a number of counties are obviously expressing their unease at the continued sponsorship, and now potentially Dublin, and who knows who else could follow suit. Like the thing with all of these kinds of sponsorships for me, no matter what major multinational you look at, like Dublin were sponsored by AIG for 10 years. They're another insurance company. I'm sure if you poked under the bonnet and you went through into all the little nitty gritty detail, you might find something in a moral sense that could be objectionable. You know, you have banks that, you know, committed some very, very tough times upon the Irish public in relation to mortgage, repayments, debts, reclaiming of houses, all those types of things. So there's like, it's very, very difficult to get hugely moralistic about these things before you kind of start disappearing off down a rabbit hole. Is there a performative element to this from a Dublin perspective? I wouldn't think so. I think these are genuinely held views. But at the same time, if they feel that strongly about it, then don't play. But, you know, I'm not going to stand in front of an advertising board. You know, I don't know. I just think it's... Yeah, the GA have made their decision. I think it's a very, very difficult one, no doubt, because obviously Allianz are tied up in all sorts of issues around insurance for clubs up and down the country. And it's a really, really tricky puzzle to unpick from their point of view. They've obviously had a partnership with this company going back for God knows how long, 20, 25, 30 years. And I just think something like this, okay, people might say it's tokenistic and that it's a small gesture. Is it going to make a huge amount of difference? I mean, where does it end? When does it stop? How long do they continue it for? Allianz are sponsors of the championship as well. So is this going to continue right through to the end of the season? And how did the governing body deal with that? I don't know. It's a peculiar one for me now.
Well, I guess it's a case of wait and see what transpires this weekend and whether other counties come out with similar ideas ahead of the weekend. But lads, for now, thanks a million, Éamonn. Thanks for joining us. We'll chat to you soon.
No bother. See you, lads. Mind yourselves.
Thanks, Rory.
Cheers, Éamonn.
Talk hurling now as we look ahead to the start of the National Hurling League next weekend in the company of Shane McGrath, who's joined us. Shane, how are things? Welcome back.
Great, lads. Great to be back. Happy New Year to you all. Maybe too late to say that now, but
and you.
Happy New Year and tip.
Yeah, has tip chase another All-Ireland title later this year. As I say, the league starts this coming weekend. But first, lads, let's just touch on the club finals like we did for the football earlier on, Rory. But we had three really enjoyable hurling club finals across the three grades over the last couple of weekends as well. Probably not a surprise, is it, that Ballygunner got the job done in the senior?
No, myself and Shane were only talking about it last week. We didn't, I kind of felt Ballygunner would have just too much. But they have too much for nearly everyone.
Yeah.
So I don't think Loughrea can feel, you know, that's not like Loughrea didn't perform or didn't play up to the potential. Like, just Ballygunner are just an unbelievable club side to do what they've been doing in Waterford and to go on and do it in Munster. Like, the Munster Club Championship is not an easy one to win. amazing stories though, like, and a superb win for Ballygunner. And I suppose Copper fastens that club now into a very elite group. Like the fact that they've managed to win that second one, I think that was definitely an itch they felt they needed to scratch. I think Upper Church, the junior and the intermediate finals were amazing. No, I would be a little bit critical, and Shane and I spoke about this on the phone a couple of days ago. I would have been a little bit critical of the junior and intermediate in both codes, actually, insofar as it was always curious to me how they equalised the standards across the counties. Like, now, maybe it's more pronounced in a football sense, given the dominance that Kerry seemed to be enjoying and the fact that, look, on Gaeltacht were in there, the 9th best team in a football context. But we've seen it as well from a Kilkenny perspective in a hurling context that, you know, generally speaking, Kilkenny teams do really well in the intermediate and junior ranks. Now, how you equalise that in a more sort of a fairer manner, is it a case that you add in another couple of layers of All-Irelands? Do you have an intermediate 1, an intermediate 2? I don't know. But like, without being sort of too pejorative, because you're going to obviously get a lot of criticism by being critical, if you would have needed to have the heart, you know, a stone for a heart, not to, you know, feel the kind of emotion that Kilbrittain felt after they won their All-Ireland and seeing the walls post-match. It was just, and obviously I think themselves, given the fact they both wear the same colour jersey, themselves and Upper Church had quite the party afterwards, and just like two incredible finals at the in both the junior and intermediate ranks, and possibly the two best finals in a hurling context, like, you know, that we've seen for a while in those ranks. And look, they're just an amazing story. Ballygunner, very, very different. It never really looked like it was in doubt from their point of view. What impact that'll have on Waterford, I'm sure we can get onto, and Shane will obviously have a view. They have a tough start this weekend going on to Páirc Uí Chaoimh, but they'll be missing obviously the Ballygunner lads for a couple of weeks. But, you know, just an outstanding club, and 3 brilliant competitions again.
Upper Church Drumbrand, Shane, got the job done, but they were pushed all the way, weren't they, by Turin, who might feel a little bit hard done by that they didn't manage to get over the line themselves. Yeah.
I suppose we're happy enough with the structure in regards to clubs for this year anyway. Yeah, with one of our teams winning it, but I understand what Rory's saying there. Like with with the Upper Church thing, it's funny. I don't know what Cathal do. A lot of people know that in TIP it's 16 teams senior, 16 teams intermediate. So it's 4 groups of 4. It's 4 groups of 4. It works well in TIP. It's worked very well in TIP. It's made for an ultra competitive championship. Where TIP clubs, I suppose, find it hard to compete at All-Ireland level in comparison maybe to other counties is there's such a spread of players now, and the TIP panel only came out there yesterday, and I think the Thurles have the most with 3 on it. So what you don't have anymore, maybe in comparison to years ago in TIP anyways, you don't have maybe 8 or 9 lads from any one club now from one club on a county panel. So what you have is you've more of a spread of players. The standard is very good, but you've more of a spread of players around all the clubs. So that's where maybe when TIP clubs go outside, maybe you find it a bit harder to compete maybe with the Ballygunners who have maybe 9 or 10 lads in one panel. The Pierce you can limit who have maybe 7 or 8, and this kind of thing. To go back to the Upper Church thing, what I'm saying about 4 groups 4, Upper Church were 1 minute away from not making it out of their group against Ballina earlier on in the year, and it was actually, I think, I'm staying corrected with this, it was Gavin Ryan, the guy who scored 3 to equalise it. He actually got the score to keep him in the championship. So they were nearly 1 minute out of not making it out of the group. And as I always say with the club, especially, if you don't have a bit of luck, you've nothing. They got that. They got a goal. They got through out of their group. And you know what? When they got out of TIP, they actually started hurling way better. Even started hurling. Nearly hurling within themselves in TIP small, because they hurling in football week on week. When they got out of TIP, they could just concentrate on hurling, and their own manager said it as well. So, look, it was an unbelievable way to win it for Upper Church. Tough way for Turin to lose it, but Turin have been thereabouts now the last few years, and they put Mayo hurling on the map. They're a serious club, top class players, more so than Eastkey as well. They obviously feel aggrieved with the red card, and they probably have a fair point as well. But clean sweep and all club titles for Munster club anyway, so happy days in that regard.
Yeah, so good year for Munster. And just on that, Sarsfields don't have anyone on the Cork panel this year, is that right?
No. What's the joke? 5 bars, no SARS. But I think in a lot of ways it's probably symptomatic of how strong SARS are as a club, as a unit, that they have a lot of very good players without having anyone outstanding. No, Jack O'Connor was given another chance, but to no different to the way that Ger Brennan, I suppose, cast his net far and wide before Christmas, ultimately still being left with, by and large, most of the familiar faces that we've seen in the Dublin jersey last year. I don't necessarily see a huge difference in Cork either. I mean, in fairness to Ben, he's had no choice anyway, because so many of them are involved with Fitzgibbon, that he had no choice but to, give lads opportunities. And there's plenty of players that were given the chances. But if you looked at the panel now, and the panel was released yesterday morning, I don't know if there's a huge contentious selection in there, and if there's anybody within the SARS group that you could say, well, look, that person was hard done by, or this person was hard done by. The one, I suppose, and I'm sure Shane might have a view, the one player that, because Shane would know the player fairly well, the one player that I was surprised that didn't make the final panel, and that's not to say he might not still get in. Ben has said that it's an open door policy, is Jack Leahy. Very impressed with him at an underage level. I know he has been playing well with UL. Did he score 1-6 there in their most recent game? Now I know, look, there's a big step up from Fitzgibbon to Intercounty, but we saw with the Tipperary panel, for instance, I think Liam Cahill has announced his panel. I think 8 of the under-20 team that won the All-Ireland are now in that panel. So Liam Cahill's view is that old adage, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And it shows the faith that he has in these young players to give them their opportunities. So I was just surprised from that point of view that Jack didn't make the initial panel. Who knows? The opportunity may arise from again, but not really surprised that there was no one from SARS.
Yeah, the spread of clubs, I guess, Shane, again, reflective in both the Tip and Cork panels released this week.
Yeah, look, I tell you, I think Tip have 13 new players involved. Like, that's a credit now to... I think the reason you've more of a spread of players, lads, in comparison maybe to 20, 30 years ago, is the standard of coaching in clubs and the people who are involved in clubs. That in every club, in Tip or the Corks or the Kilkennys or Galways or, anywhere, Dublin, up the north as well. In every club, you're going to have one or two really, really good hurling, football, ladies football at club. You're going to have people who are getting exposed to, colleges, hurling, Fitzgibbon, Siggers. You're going to have people who are getting exposed to development squads, people who are getting exposed to coaching webinars, coaching seminars. Like, 30 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to go see the likes of Paul Kinner give a talk about this is how you should coach, because it just wasn't there really, or it wasn't maybe as
accessible,
accessible to the whole. Whereas nowadays, like, and I can only speak from my own experience, you get to go and watch these people, listen to them, and goes, that's how we should be coaching. And I think that's why you have more of a spread of players across all the clubs, because in every club now you have someone who's able to talk to talk to kids, train kids properly. Like, it's not the All-Ireland final, or an under 6 or under 8 blitz. My own kids are playing in them. Just sometimes I think, some parents think it is the All-Ireland final, but I mean, you're coaching kids you're coaching kid players to be better adult players. That's what you want. And that's why I think you've more of a spread across all the clubs. And I can only speak for myself personally. We're a small club, we're a junior club, but like, the chance of someone from here now playing for the Tip seniors is every bit the same as someone from Turrisarsfields or Lochmore or Nina or anywhere. And I think that's the brilliant thing now about the development squads and about the schools and all that. So that's why I think you're going to see it more and more and more, the widespread of club selection on intercounty panels. And it's brilliant to see. I said Tip had 13 new players involved. And that's brilliant now. That's, it's great. We're really looking forward, really excited to see these guys get a crack in the National Hurling League.
Yeah, it's a great point, that, actually, and we're all involved in clubs in different guises, Rory, but the standards certainly have risen, haven't they? And that's obviously feeding into the intercounty scene then as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the big stories of 2025 was Kildare. Kildare were an amazing story to go on and win the Joe McDonagh, and I know we might get onto them in a little bit about them being in Division 1B now. That's I mean, people often say, that the hurling landscape hasn't changed in 125 years. I mean, I remember a time when Dublin hurling wasn't taken seriously. Now you have Kildare coming to the table. I mean, Munster tends to dominate, but Munster dominates in hurling and football, Cathal. That's just a fact. It is a fact, and it's always been that way by and large. But I think, look, the quality of the coaching. Shane mentioned there about Paul Kinnerk. I was at a coaching conference a couple of years ago. He was the guest speaker. I mean, he was electric. Like, he was so giving. Like, this is a guy now that was at the peak of his game, still is at the peak of his powers. Like, I don't know. Yeah, he had won his first All-Ireland, I think, with Limerick in 2018 as coach. Had already won an All-Ireland title when he was in with Davy, I think, back in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And he just began, he came up onto the stage. He went into, like, he's very big on the games-based coaching. Like, everything has to be centered around the game just to make it interesting. But like, one of the things that he said was, like, oftentimes we finish with a game when we train.
Yep.
He said, right, why don't you start with a game? Because normally you do your drills, you do your warm up, you do your drills, and then you finish with a game, because that's the little carrot at the end, or the little nugget that the little treat. But he was like, well, start with a game. And I was going, this felt like almost revolutionary, and it was kind of such a simple idea.
Yeah.
But it just showed that, and he stood up there for 40 minutes. He was so giving. There was no secrets. He wasn't, trying to, well, this is what happens within the Limerick camp now, and I'm not telling anybody. He was, imparting this knowledge, this information, this expertise in a way that was very charitable and very coherent and very accessible, I suppose, being the point. And when you have people like that are able to sort of filter the information down to a sort of an army of coaches that are only too glad to gobble up the information, I think that's only going to help lots of clubs at the coal face and at grassroots level to improve the skills that they're imparting. And hurling is different. It is more difficult to coach. It is more difficult to fund. It is more difficult to play. I was, like, for example, and I know we're probably getting sidetracked here to a certain degree, I was over in Decathlon there a couple of weeks ago, picking up a couple of different things, grips now and small little bits and bobs. It's €100 for a helmet now. €100. That's not an insignificant investment, like, for somebody to make. Your hurley could cost you €40. You break it in the first day out, so like slitters go missing by the new time. So it's very, very expensive for clubs to sustain this. And I think that's where the big challenge from a GA perspective is going to come. If they're truly and really serious about spreading the game and spreading the gospel, like funding and finance around those small basics, I think is a massive thing that they really do need to look at.
Yeah, and I think there have been starter packs given out, haven't there, to certain clubs that wish to get hurling going in their areas as well. We'll touch on Kildare in a little bit, but let's turn our attention to Division 1A for this weekend. So 3 matches down for decision. Tipperary against Galway on Saturday night. Then on Sunday it's Kilkenny versus Offaly and Cork against Waterford. We might as well start, Shane, with Tipperary. How has the winter been down there?
It's been good. I'd say, it's definitely been shortened by the victories and the way the club scene is as well, and even the way the schools hurling's going there now. Look, it's great, but I suppose the thing that gets, I won't say gets thrown at us, but it's probably put to it, and rightly so maybe, is just this back-to-back thing. And, can we do it? Or more so Rory McIlroy trying to win the Grand Slam. People found it hard to do it. I've been involved in teams myself where we found it hard to do it.
The 60s, is it, Shane? It's going back to the 60s?
I think it is, yeah. So, look, I suppose, I don't think it's something they'll dwell on too much, but at the same time, it'd been very, very nice to be part of a tip group to do that. And, you'd be in a very select group to do that. And I suppose it shows how hard it is and how good the Kilkennys were and the Limericks were of the last, 30, 40 years to actually go and do that. So So that'll definitely be, you know, it has to be a target.
Yeah.
I think you're as a sports person, you want to push yourself, so that'll be a target for them, and that'll be an expectation of the people as well, Paddy. But like say for Saturday night, it's great, you know, there's a great buzz at the Saturday night games, in Thurles and in St. 43 and these places, like, but be nice now to get now the guard of honour there after Galway lads.
Oh, they will love the guard of honour.
I'd say the claps will be. I don't know what they'll be. There won't be too much love in them anyway. But sure, look, that's just the way it is, and that's the nature of it, and that's part and parcel of it. As I said, I've had to do it as well for other teams, so you know, it's our turn to get it. And look, that's not a big deal either. Just something take 20 seconds done out the gate. I suppose the exciting thing for Tip and for Galway, both teams, Carl, is you've a lot of new faces coming in, and I suppose we've traditionally seen the league as a kind of a place to you get your chance. But at the end of the day, if you get a chance, and say if it's Tipperary Galway, and you don't take it, you might get another one. That's the nature of the beast in intercounty, top level intercounty sports. That there will be 3 or 4 guys on both sides probably going to get a chance, because you know it's given matches are on this week, and you know lads are coming back from injury. You know, we'll say the more senior guys are probably not going to play the first 2 games. So that's what I'm really looking forward to now, the weekend across the board. But I suppose in particular for Tip and Galway to see, right, what 7 or 8 lads are getting a chance, and are they going to take it? Because if they don't take it, they mightn't get back in there again. And that's a pressure, but you know what? It's a privilege too, because you're getting picked because they feel they're good enough to play. And now they're saying to you, right, here's your chance. And next week, X and Y are back. They're going for your jersey as well. You get in there, you get the jersey, you hold on to it, don't let anyone else take it off you. And to be fair to Liam Cahill, that's what he's done. And, you know, Mahal has done that in previous terms as well with other teams. But I think that's the way it has to be with the league now. If you are getting a chance, lads, that you get it, here's your jersey, it's yours now. But if you're coming off at 45 minutes as a player, like, when are we going to get this chance again? And that'll either make or break players. So I tell you, that's what I'm actually most looking forward to the weekend. New lads coming in, who's going to take their chance? And if they don't, will they get another one?
What do Tipperary need? You mentioned the overall goal this year, Shane, will be to try and retain the All-Ireland title. So what do they need from the National League to try and help them achieve that down the line?
Look, like they need to find maybe another 2-3 guys that would actually be championship panelists, or else starting on the team. Because if we want to do back to back, and if it will be, you know, it will be a target, it will be a goal. You probably can't go with the same 18 or 19 guys again. There probably will have to be a change. You see that in teams in previous years. Probably will have to be some tweak. And the tweak mightn't be on the 15. It might be who's coming in for the last 10 minutes. And I think that'll be the goal for them, like to say, right, as I said, there's 13 new guys on the Tip panel. A lot of them wouldn't be known to the wider public. But if 1 or 2 of them can come in and really challenge for a top 26 spot for championship stuff, well, now you have a much stronger panel, because you're trying to take the place of a lad who's kind of established himself there as a championship starter or a championship finisher. And now you have a much stronger panel, you've better internal games, you've better competition. As a management team, you're saying everything without saying anything at all, to say, he's in now, up to you, what do you want to do? Are you going to do something different personally in your game to try and take his spot? So I think that's what Tip want. I think that's what all they want, but I suppose in particular Tip probably need maybe 2-3 changes. And you know, there's a few guys that aren't back this year that were involved in the All-Ireland final last year in the, you know, in the extended panel and stuff. So straight away, I suppose Liam Cahill is saying, few changes have been made, there's a few spots up for grabs, and here's your chance to go and grab one of them. Like.
Rory, where are Galway at, do you think?
It's very curious. It's going to be, I suppose, I think we'll find out a lot more on Saturday night, live on RTÉ, 7 o'clock. I think they're on the air from 6:30, so it'll be very interesting. It's year 2 for Micheál Donoghue's Mark 2, and I suppose it was a very disappointing year last year.
Yeah.
They didn't really fire a shot. They went out of the championship,
against Tipperary, wasn't it?
It was against Tip in a quarter final, yeah. And it was, I suppose, a disappointing exit in that, you know, you would have expected a little bit more, to be a little bit more competitive at the very, very least.
I think Rory, now just being at that match, right, and what happened before him in Limerick and Dublin, right, but that was probably the most exciting thing that happened in the Gaelic grounds that day. Was the Limerick and Dublin result. And I know that sounds mad, but I think that will be that when they look back at it now, that would be a big low point for Galway hurling that day. First of all, with the crowd that went to the match, because just I know I see it myself. The public up there probably just didn't believe they were going to win, so they didn't go down to Limerick to follow them. And secondly, the atmosphere, like Tip were way better. They were miles better than that day. Galway just looked void of any kind of structure, any kind of plan. Whether it was just just kind of get to the end of the year and it'd be done. Like only like Cathal Mullaney was immense that day as well. You know what I mean? If they got further, he would be in hurler of the year territory. But that day, I think when they look back at it, will be to say, right, I don't know could it get much worse than that in terms of the performance, the atmosphere, everything. Like that match was done 25 minutes to go. And like I'd say the Tip crowd was probably 10-1 outnumbered them. So I think that has to hurt them, and that has to irk them, and that has to be a driving factor for them this year to say, we never want to have that feeling again. Nobody there following us, didn't perform, no life in the team. And I think that'll definitely be a motivating factor for them to say, can't go back there again. We just can't. We're too good. We're too talented a group to be going back there, getting hammered in quarterfinals as well with absolutely no atmosphere to the game. So I think that'll be a big driving force from Rory anyway, just from being there myself that day.
I think even the performance in the Leinster final against Kilkenny was very disappointing when we were kind of expecting just them to raise a small bit more of a gallop. So right across their championship, it just wasn't Galway's year. David Burke now, obviously exiting the panel stage left, a massive leader. I know maybe was coming to the end of his career and his influence on games had started to wane just simply by virtue of the amount of hurling that he's done. I think people wouldn't realise, St. Thomas's would go deep into the club championship most years. So, David would have done a huge amount of hurling and will obviously continue to play with his club. But, just one of those very, very big leaders that is going to leave a void. Leadership, I think, for a lot of counties will always be an issue, and they're not easy characters to replace. And it will be interesting now just to see what kind of leadership emerges, who is going to stand up. And I think, look, if I was Galway heading down to Thurles on Saturday night, you'd be saying to yourself, this is absolutely manna from heaven, because you're getting an opportunity live on national television, first game back, and you're going into the home of the All-Ireland champions. So I'm hoping, because I think the Leinster Championship needs Galway, and it needs Galway to be certainly at the peak of their powers and whatever potential that they can manage to reach. I think that's what we need, and hopefully we'll start to see signs of renaissance on Saturday night.
Yeah, and as you say, that one live on RTÉ television on Saturday. 2 games then in Division 1A on Sunday afternoon. Cork opening their season, Rory, in the National League against Waterford at Porky Queeve. The winter assessment is over. New manager in situ. How would you describe the mood in the county coming into this new campaign?
Look, there's absolutely no point in saying anything other than that last year's All-Ireland final, and particularly the second half, was like it was death knell. It felt like a death knell for the game, for the morale, for the spirit. Obviously punctured a massive hole in the hype machine, which I think it doesn't take much to crank into gear again. I think there was just a general air of despondency, and I think people were distraught. I was meeting Cork people right up until Christmas, and it was like, you were still at a funeral, and you were talking to people in hushed whispers, almost covering your mouth, because you just weren't, you were almost afraid to get into too much detail on it, because the postmortems just continued long and long into it. And look, I assume that the players themselves will have learned and parked it, and I know, look, they've changed the sports psych, which I think was probably a wise call. That's not to obviously denigrate Gary Keegan and his efforts, but I think maybe having somebody in there with a new approach, I think, is going to be key. I think if you get to 3 All-Ireland finals for 4 years or 5 years, whatever it was, and lose all 3 of them, one by a point, and then two in sort of a crushing manner. Despite the fact that I think Cork, I don't know, does anybody else manage to beat Limerick over the last number of years? Well, Dublin obviously did it last year, in fairness. So, but I think it looks to, from the outside looking in, it would appear that the biggest challenge for Cork is the 6 inches above in here. It's basically it's a head game now. I don't think there's a lack of depth in the panel. I think the quality is there. I think they'll have the firepower again up front. They might have a couple of issues in the defence. Be very interested to see what full back line particularly is named for Sunday. And I think they have an issue in goal. I think they have a problem in goal. I think wouldn't be surprised to see young O'Sullivan get his chance in the number one spot from Father O'Neill's on Sunday. But what can you say after the way last year finished up? Not a whole pile. Yeah. And I think whatever happens in the league won't necessarily soothe there won't be any balming effect for any of those wounds.
There's only one way to solve it,
there's only one way. There is only one way. And by the way, that one way is a path that's a difficult one. I mean, like, we can maybe get onto it on a later date. Getting out of Munster again. I mean, just getting out of Munster alone. Like Cork's first match, and I can guarantee you this will be the one that they will have earmarked above all else. It's Tipperary and Thurles.
Yeah, and you probably would have put Cork, Limerick and Tipperary this time last year. Cork, Limerick and Clare, rather, this time last year.
I went for Tipperary. I went for Tip,
Did
Shane.
you go for Tip? In the pecking order in Munster. Shane, I'd say you're devastated to hear about the hardship that Cork had to experience over the course of the winter. Yeah, you look devastated, all right.
We've had a tough winter, feeling sorry for Cork.
What are you expecting from them this season?
From Cork?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like they're class outfit. They're ticking every box bar just getting it done like on the final day. They're ticking every other box. Big performances in Munster, big performances in semi-finals, outstanding individual performances. They're just finding it hard to get it done on the biggest day of all. And I don't know what the issue is with that. It's not physicality. They're physically as strong, not stronger than most teams. It's not hurling, because they're probably one of the best sticks in terms of sticks, and they're probably the best. So I don't know what it is. Maybe the few changes this year, maybe this change of the style of play. Maybe, having a plan B, like, when plan A doesn't work, because plan A worked so well in semi-final that when it didn't work in the final, or it was hit with maybe a sucker punch, as Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan till you get punched in the face, and they got an awful punch in the face. But it wasn't in the first half. It was still in the second half. It wasn't as if they went down 6 points down. Tip went in 6 points down. But so I'm saying it was just a second half thing. That's all it was. And maybe there was no plan B. There was no plan B, and things didn't work. And then, it was like a domino effect around the field. Everything started losing all the battles. Things just didn't go the way to get sent off. So look, I don't think they've changed too much in terms of their physicality or in terms of their hurling. I just think maybe the way they're playing or the way they're setting up, that might be the way that they're going to go at it. And maybe Ben O'Connor is going to bring that different style of play to Cork. Because I don't think too much more has to change, to be totally honest. I think they tick all the other boxes. They're still one of the top teams in the country, and they'll still be one of the hardest teams to beat this year. I have no doubt about that.
Well, we'll wait and see what happens. Waterford back in Division 1A as well. And then the other game in 1A this weekend, Rory, Kilkenny against Offaly at Nolan Park on Sunday. Kilkenny haven't been miles away the last couple of years without really getting over the line. What about their intentions for this season? I guess no more than Cork going all the way has to be their overall goal. Well,
they're utterly dominant in Leinster. They will always produce players. They probably, I suppose there's a couple of issues. I mean, TJ obviously is he named as captain?
I think so, yeah.
They named him as captain. I mean, look, the man is just a legend of the game, but time waits for no one. And depending on TJ at this stage of his career, I suppose it's probably time for maybe other forwards, Dion Cody's and Adrian Mullins and these types to maybe step up. Have they the depth? maybe to go and challenge a Tipperary, a Limerick. We won't really know, I suppose, until they get to an All-Ireland semi-final again. Like they will, like the chances are they're going to win Leinster again. You can't really see anything other than that happening. So that'll put them back into an All-Ireland semi-final, where that's where the test is going to come from a Kilkenny perspective. It's not going to be in Nolan Park on Sunday. I think Offaly will struggle. I think Offaly will struggle in the league in general. I think they'll probably be relegated. But it is tough. I mean, there's 2 go down, and just look, I think Offaly will be one of those, you know.
Yeah, 2 out of 7 is a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot.
It's a big cut from the top tier. And Limerick not in action this weekend. Let's take a look at 1B as well, because Clare find themselves down there this year. They'll play Dublin this weekend, and a couple of other games there as well. Carlow against Down, and Wexford in action against Antrim this weekend as well. Is it much of a hindrance, do you think, Shane, for Clare to be in Division 1B against perceived weaker opposition?
I don't think it is, because they might get an opportunity to give a few more kind of newer guys or fringe guys or try out things, you know, maybe because, you know, they won't be playing, I suppose, top level Liam McCarthy teams week on week in 1B. Like, you know, they'll be playing, obviously they're playing, say, Dublin this weekend, and then, you know, they'll have the likes of Carlow, Down, Kildare, Wexford and Antrim. So, you know, they could probably try out a few things, and there mightn't be as much media spotlight on them, so they could be trying things without the whole country talking about them. So I don't think see it as too much of a hindrance. It wasn't a hindrance before when the likes of Limerick were there, and the way they used it and the way they were able to, you know, get more game time into lads, because, you know, 1A is obviously more cutthroat because of the standard of team that's in it, like. And then, you know, 1B, you could try out a few things. Like, I mean, as I said, it's really good for hurling too. Like, say, Down getting played the likes of Clare or the likes of Wexford and Dublin, these teams, also Kildare as well. You know, there'll be big crowds going to those games as well. So that's worth anything in terms of the promotion of hurling as well. And, you know, Down actually playing the likes of the Clares and the Wexfords and the Dublins of this sort, like. And so I don't think it will be too much of a hindrance. I think they'll use it well, and they'll use it kind of the blood guys, try out a few things, try out a few styles of play, and maybe give the more senior lads, the likes of maybe Shane O'Donnell's, Tony Kelly's, these kind of guys, maybe give them a little bit more time off, and like as in they don't have to play week on week. They don't have to be there week on week. They kind of pick their games, have their probably 2 target games, go hard at those games, and be nice and fresh going to the championship. So I'd imagine that's the way the Clare are going to approach it anyway, Paul.
Would you go along with that, Rory?
Yeah, I think so. Like they'll still get a couple of decent games. You would imagine Dublin and Wexford, and it's very hard to say what way Antrim will approach it. But look, you would imagine Antrim will always be up for it, given who their manager is when it comes to taking on Clare. So 3 really, you know, good challenges in that division, and then obviously they'll go on and they'll play a 1B final against either Dublin or Wexford, I would imagine. And I think that will probably count for a pretty good innings in terms of the spring campaign from Brian Lohan's point of view. You have to look at their age profile, you know, getting into a slog of, you know, week on week in a really tough Division 1A might necessarily be, you know, a great thing from their point of view. It might actually be ideal. You know, John Conlon is, you know, around so long. Tony Kelly, Conor Cleary, all these guys have been, you know, soldiering for quite a while with Clare, and having that like easier, softer spring, which it will be from their point of view, I think won't necessarily be the worst thing in the world. They will make a final, they will get promoted, and then it'll be all eyes on Munster Championship for them.
Yeah, it will. And then we touched on it earlier already, lads, and you touched on it there, Shane, with Down and Kildare in Division 1B. We spoke about Tureen and Easky and their progress in the club finals as well, and coming so close to climbing the steps of the Hogan stand there and lift some silverware. But for the counties that are maybe outside, Shane, of the more traditional hurling counties, if you like, how important is it for them to get this exposure in 1B for Down and Kildare?
It's important to get the exposure, and it's important, like, you know, that the grounds are full when these bigger teams come to town, you know, to play them as well, and get kids out and get them to see that, you know, that they don't have to look down to Limerick or, you know, or the likes of these or the Tips or the Kilkennys or Fox or these counties to find their heroes. That their heroes, their hurling heroes, can be from within their own county. And, you know, likes of Kildare and Down, Antrim, all these places, like Carlow as well. Like, I mean, I just see it firsthand there with the colleges, you know, lads from Kildare and these places, like they are top class Fitzgibbon hurlers, but they're top class inter-county hurlers. They're brilliant club hurlers. We see how strong the club scene is, even in Kildare in particular at the moment, with how good Naas are. Like, so I think that's the big thing. The exposure is good, but the other more important thing is, Carl, that don't get hammered. Don't get hammered. You know, go out, be ultra competitive. Obviously, are Kildare going to win all their matches in one week? They're not, realistically. But if they go out and they're very competitive and they target a few games that they win and they go and do it, well, then straight away you have a bit of confidence built, you have a bit of strength and depth built, and, you know, for the management as well, it's the best way to be going into a championship. So I think the exposure is important, and, you know, it gets good coverage to the media and that people go and actually go to the games. But the more important thing is here, be competitive. Don't be taking absolute hammerings, because that's only just it's going to be terrible for morale, and it's going to be, you know, just have a bad atmosphere around the camp week on week going into these games. So be competitive, go out and perform well, and that will be worth anything to them in terms of prep for the championship.
It's like two different leagues, Kyle. You know, you've Dublin, Wexford and Clare will probably duke it out for the two promotion spots, and then Carlow, Kildare, Down and Antrim effectively to, you know, in a sort of a mini league to see who goes down. And I think, like, Shane is spot on, like, target a couple of games, target one or two games, because whoever, you know, if you can get a win, you'll have that head to head, if nothing else. And if you can get to 4 to 6 points, might be enough for them to stay up.
Yep. Well, let's see how it pans out for those teams. Plenty of action as well across the other divisions. In Division 2, Meath against London, Derry against Kerry, Mayo versus Laois. Division 3, Armagh versus Louth, Roscommon, Wicklow and Tyrone versus Donegal. And then in Division 4, Cavan against Warwickshire, Leitrim versus Longford and Monaghan against Sligo. All of those games across the weekend as well. But let's just circle back to finish maybe on Division 1A and 1B. Lads, if we can pick maybe your winners of those divisions from this juncture. Shane, can Tip follow on, do you think?
Okay, right. I don't know. I tell you what, I think, I honestly do think that Cork will go deep in the league again this year. You know, I'd expect them to be thereabouts in terms of 1A. In terms of 1B, I don't know. I think Dublin are going to be just, you know, maybe they feel they need momentum going into the championship, and what better way to get it than to try and really go at the league. So I think Dublin are going to be thereabouts for 1B in the league, and I'd say Cork's thereabouts for 1A in the league.
Okay, Cork and Dublin for Shane. What about you, Rory?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Shane, and from a Cork perspective, I think in terms of flushing out the psychological dirty petrol of last year, I think a positive league campaign will be a good thing from a Cork perspective. You've new management, an endorsement of their ideologies, team selections, getting success and getting momentum early on is going to be important. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them end up in a league final. And I think Limerick will end up in a league final. Get a sense from Limerick that, like, they didn't win it last year or the year before. I think last year they'll feel slightly, I think Limerick will feel, how in the hell did we lose to Dublin? You know, there will be that sense from a Limerick perspective. And I was even just looking at the teams that he was picking for this Munster League. He was picking very strong sides. Like, you know, it was like 8-9 lads who would have been, we'll say, first choice in All-Ireland finals. And he continued that trend last weekend against Waterford in the final of it. I get a sense that, like, Caroline Currid's back on board there, so it's like kind of a band all back together. No, they've lost a couple. Declan Hannon obviously leaving, no different to David Burke in a Galway sense. Big leadership figure, big character. That's gone out of your dressing room. That does leave a void. But Limerick, for me, I think they'll come back into the mix in a big, big way, and I could see them putting a bit of an emphasis on the league, because I think there's enough of a gap. They have a bye on the first week of the Munster Championship, if I'm not mistaken. So that would give them possibly a 3 to 4 week run-in before they play from a league final to Championship hurling. I think that'll suit Kiley down to the ground, and I think he'll target getting to a league final, and they'll be the two that I'd see in it, and toss of a coin between them. In Division 1B, I think if Clare are serious about the year, they need to go down and win that league, you know, because I think they could struggle to get out of Munster otherwise.
Okay, big early call there from you, Rory. But all to look forward to this weekend, lads. Thanks very much. We'll chat to you again next week. Shane, enjoy the Guard of Honour if you get one on Saturday night. And we'll talk to you again soon, Rory. Thanks a million as well.
Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow?